Welcome to the Balanced Assessment System module on connecting instruction to assessment or the assessment to the instruction for the DESSA alternate. My name is Michelle Jackson, and as the Education Associate for Special Populations, I'm the state lead for this assessment. This webinar is being recorded, and all attendees are on mute to provide a learning experience, a wonderful learning experience for all. If you have any questions, please use the chat box and I will check it throughout the presentation for questions. This is the third webinar, and some of the information shared might have been presented in one of the other two webinars, but the focus will be more aligned to our discussion topic today. The information in the upcoming slides were gathered through the Dynamic Learning Maps website, which we will review as well during this time. I also have a couple pictures that I got from Pixabay. They are free stock photos. Okay. This webinar is the third, again, as I said, in a series of 3 about the balanced assessment model or systems. But we find it valuable to include this graphic of Delaware's balanced assessment system model. So you're going to notice that each of the assessment type is color coded for clarity on how each is integrated. The first module describes this graphic in more detail, but it's important to note that formative and benchmark assessments are assessments for learning, whereas interim summatives, including state testing, are assessments of learning. At the end of this webinar, you'll be familiar with how to locate the educated resources available on DLM, as well as access the essential elements, unpacking for instruction, navigate the professional development site, locate familiar text, view an example of the mini-maps, sample release testlets, and we'll take a peek at a portion of a score report. But for more information on how to use score report to guide instruction, there are a lot more in-depth details provided in webinar 2, the data and reporting literacy webinar. So let's jump in. This diagram shows the relationship between various components of the DLM system. The large organizing framework is a learning map. From this, we can determine the claims that can then be further divided into conceptual areas. These conceptual areas are made of essential elements, which are the smallest units of the system. So I cut and paste a few of the clips to share with you. So there are 4 claims and 9 conceptual areas in ELA, and that is the same for math, which also has 4 major claims and 9 conceptual areas. Science is a little bit different. It has 3 domains, 10 core ideas, and 16 topics. So for our purposes, I'm going to get a little bit more into I'm going to talk a little bit more on the essential elements. Is everyone seeing my screen? Just want to make sure. Awesome. The dynamic learning maps essential elements are specific statements of the content and skills that are linked to the college and career readiness grade level standards. And so what they do is they detail specific expectations for students with significant cognitive disabilities. They were developed to address that the Common Core standards did not provide specific guidance on how to apply these standards for students who perform well below expected levels or have identified disabilities. In this case, the essential elements are intended to provide links between college and career readiness standards and grade-specific expectations for students with significant cognitive disabilities. All right, so I'm going to take a moment. This is the direct link here on your screen. I'm going to show you how to navigate to the blueprints for ELA, math, and science, because of course this is assessment, so we're going to start there. And I'm going to share some other things on that page. So the direct link is here to the site. So I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so here I am at dynamiclearningmaps.org. And then you would press click on Delaware, and that will bring you to our Delaware page. From that page, if you click on resources for educators and district staff, there's then another click for educator resource page for English language arts and mathematics, and then there's also one for science. So first I'm going to walk you through the one for science, for ELA and math. So when you click on that, there are several things on this page. And I'm just going to walk you through it, but I'm going to toggle back and forth the PowerPoint on this page because there's a lot here that you can find useful and also share with other teachers. So the very first link that you see here in blue is, of course, we're at the ELA page. And each tab, you have the essential elements, the familiar text, writing, collection list, and release testlets and sample testlet information pages. So we're right now, it automatically defaults to the essential elements tab. And the very first one, of course, is a blueprint for ELA. I also want to show you that the first thing that you can do is that the essential elements are not just for the tested grades, but it starts all the way from kindergarten onwards. So that's where you'd find that complete list. But for the blueprint, this is what are we testing? And you can see here that this is where I got the clip for the major claims and conceptual areas for ELA. So what are the blueprints for each grade level? And this shows you how many from each conceptual area, how many items, the number that of essential elements that are assessed per conceptual area. So there are 10 for grade 3, 3 in claim 1. You see 1 is in claim 3. See, if you look at grade 6, you can see 1 in area 1, but there are 6 in claim 2. So, and then you have the totals on the side. All right. Following that, you can then look at the essential elements assessed by claim for each of the grade level. All right. So RL, of course, the reading literature, you have the reading informational, the writing, and the language. And these blueprints were reduced this year as well. So these are new blueprints for the 2020 administration year. Another way that you can get to the current tested elements for ELA is if you get to this page, you'll see we are a year-end state. And so if you see anything with a gray flag, these are not assessed in the year-end state. It doesn't mean you can't teach them, but they're just not a part of the blueprint. So we'll just click on the first one, answer who and what questions to demonstrate understanding of details in a text. If you click on that, you're going to see the grade level standard, the essential, this is a common core standard, the essential elements that links to that standard or accesses that standard, and then you're going to see the linkage levels and what is expected at that grade level. Along with that, you'll also be given a mini map. If you've attended any of DLM's mapping events, and I had the luxury of doing so, this map is huge. I don't know a space big enough that probably could fit the entire map. So this is like what they call a mini map. So it's a portion of that map that that shows everything from the initial precursor all the way up to the successor of that essential element. So here it is, T, that's the target, can answer who and what questions about details in a narrative. So that's the target that brings you towards this essential element. And so along with with information on the standard, you'll also find the minimap that goes along with that. So I'm going through a lot of this here because this, of course, is the instruction piece. And so I want to make sure that we know how to find everything so that we can talk a little bit how we would bridge that information. Let's see. So I was at state. I'm going back here to my page. I want to make sure I showed everything. So on the science, you have also the current tested essential elements for science and the DLM, just information on how they were developed for science. And then this tab, this is for Delaware. If you notice, Delaware and DC only, because we use that blueprint phase with biology. And so this is our blueprint here, and this is where I got the clip for the slide that I showed earlier for science. So this again goes through the number of essential elements that are assessed at science, and then it goes into more of the descriptions, okay, for each of these topics. All right, so that's just a quick snapshot here. And again, along with that, you also have instructional activities as well that you can do. So if you take a look, here is the daylight, it's called the daylight hours. And so you see there are science instructional activities here that you can do as well for each of these. Okay. So that's just a quick snapshot of what the page looks like. Okay. So now this is a clip of the foundational area of the learning map module for the DLM alternate assessments for grades 3-5. When we pull that up on screen, it's turned the other way. So I had to make a clip and turn it correctly so you'll be able to see it. So this is for grades 3-5, and the blue represents ELA, the pink is math, yellow is both ELA and math, and the white is not used in the testlets for that grade band. So if you look at F37, you'll notice it says notice what is new, and F2 says recognize same. So those nodes are foundational skills that students would need for both math and ELA. And nodes are individual skills at a linkage level related to an essential element. Oops. So, okay, so taking a look now at our alternate assessment design. Again, so here the essential element is used to build a blueprint for the assessment. So the graphic on your screen is an example of a minimap. And it's illustrating the example of the essential element for 4th grade math. Identify coins such as penny, nickel, dime, and quarter for their values, and then the 5 linkage levels that will be used to assess that essential element. So linkage levels again are a small collection of nodes. So in basic terms, each linkage level is linked to the essential element based on how the student is able to access that essential element. So the 5 linkage levels are the initial precursor, the distal precursor, the proximal precursor, target, and successor. So each of those has, and you can see the key on the side that gives you the letters that stand for those. So science, though, only has 3 levels: initial, precursor, and target. So if we take a look at this, and I do mention this is repeated from the data literacy slide, but I'm going somewhere different with this one. So if the student's able to recognize a penny identified here as M-450 right here, that is a target. But if the student is given a money and another object like a ball and can identify money, that is M2472, which is the proximal precursor level. So if the student is able to simply attend to the coin you're holding, which is F62, or that's the initial precursor level. So there are different ways in which you can use this assessment design to know where the students are, but also know where you want to take them. So let's say that student is attending, you may want to get them to begin to attend to the money over the ball to bring them up to this level. So this is kind of how we can use this assessment in our instruction. So this assessment then is designed so that all learners, regardless of their communication or cognitive level, that there can also not just be assessed on the alternate achievement standards, but also instructed using the alternate assessment standards. Okay. So a teacher can use this map as what? Entry and exit points for instruction. All right. So let us look at the essential element that is tested in third grade. And take note of the different linkage levels that are used to access that essential element. So if you look at target, it is definitely directly linked to that essential element. All right. So this is that same, let me just go back one so you see where I am. This is for this essential element, EENF123, which is differentiate a fractional part from a whole. And I'm going to show you, this is taken from the blueprint on that I showed you a few minutes ago, where to get the blueprint. So this is one of the essential elements that's taken from the blueprint. So I'm still staying with that same essential element. Dynamic Learning Maps has created professional modules that can give teachers the ability to further enhance their instruction, but not just the instruction, their knowledge as well on specific essential elements. We have educators that are that did not start out as educators. They're coming from other professions, and they may not know as much about the subject area. So this is where, if they're teaching students on the alternate assessment, this is where they should really go to develop professionally and to learn further information about the subject matter, but also how to teach the students. So let's look at the module suggestions here. And what I did was I clicked on that that same essential element. If you take a look at it, it's the same one, differentiate a fractional part from a whole. So there are module suggestions listed here, where a teacher not just view the foundational modules. So these foundational modules will help the teacher, but especially the modules organized by claims and conceptual areas. So once you've accessed the module, you can either complete, they have two versions. You can either complete the self-directed module, which is what we recommend, or the facilitated module if you're the person leading that PD or you're watching as a group. So for this essential element, differentiate a fractional part from a whole, you can see that you have forms of number, fraction concepts and modules part 1, fraction concepts and modules part 2, and the power of 10 frames. These are modules that a teacher could take, an educator could take, and these all fall under claim 1 actually. Okay. Oops. So I'm gonna take a moment to walk you through how to get there, because it's not just enough that I'm telling you. I have to show you how you can access this information for yourself. So I'm going to start back off at our resources. There's several ways that you can get there. So a couple of things I do want to show you first, which is, remember I went through the foundational maps. This is where I got that clip from. So here's a foundational map for grades 3 to 5. And this is a great snapshot for a teacher that's teaching multi-grade levels of where can I get the student to access certain standards and instructional pieces. So, and here it is for 6 to 8 and 9 to 12. So this is a snapshot of the foundation, the full photo of that foundational map. And then they also have a guide that you can use to give further information on each of these. So let me share that. So dynamic learning maps is not just about assessment. It is, as I mentioned previously, deep on professional development. So here's the professional development tab. And here is the professional development website, which is actually dlmpd.com. And there are several ways which you can look at it. There are several things on the website that I'm going to go through as far as instructional. They have exemplar text supports, instructional resources, and definitely the professional development. So I think I'm going to go under math claim 1. Remember, I said that that's where you'll find these. So if you remember, one of the recommended modules in dealing with that particular essential element was fraction concepts and models part 1. And so remember, I was saying there's a way for you to take the online self-directed module or the facilitated module. And so this is where you can access that if you were going to delve deeper into that essential element. Of course, we do not teach just one essential element at a time, but it's a great map that further shows you how to further shows you how to teach these. Okay, all right. And then, of course, you can look for the modules in an alphabetical order in order to find whatever it is that you're looking for. Okay, something else that I'm going to show you really quickly that is linked to instruction, of course, is I've sent teachers here, and this is crucial. The essential elements, it's not just enough that, hey, they're being assessed and hey, they exist. This particular part of the website on unpacking the essential elements, they have it for ELA and math here. It's completed for ELA and math. And right here, you can see that you can get all grades in a snapshot, which most teachers are not teaching every single grade. And you can get it as well for math. So I'm going to go to math 3rd grade because that's where we were focused on for now. And I'm just going to toggle it over here so you can see that screen. And so you have the grade level standard, you have the essential element, but then unpacked, they go over the concept, skills, big idea, and then they also go into the essential questions. So a teacher could use the information here. It tells you how do you unpack that standard and then teach this in your classroom as well. Okay. I definitely recommend that you take our courses that we have under alternate assessment. We have it for ELA, math and science, and where we delve deeper into way more into all of these. Again, this is just a snapshot that you're going to get from me today. All right. And so I want to make sure that I'm showing everything I meant to show. Let me just click on the site really quickly again. They also have a checkoff sheet for the PD modules that you can use to say what you've completed. And I think I brought you here already on the professional modules developed by Claim. Okay. So again, this is the website link. And, you know, it focuses on teaching and learning in the areas of English language arts, math, and science as well. All right. All right, so I showed you how to unpack the essential elements. So this is a clip that I took based on that same standard that we were looking at, unpacking M.EE.NF.1 to 1, grades 1 to 3. All right, so taking a look at that, and you see where it says differentiate a fractional part from a whole. So the concept here is that fractions are numbers that can be represented in different ways. So again, just reading these provide the teacher with ideas of what is it that student needs to know in relation to the element addressed here. Then the skills, recognizing a whole, creating equal size parts, the big idea, really, which is what we want to get across with this essential element, which is that a fraction represents equal parts of a whole, and then the essential elements. These can be used every day or a few days as a topic of focus as well. So these are linked, of course, towards target. So I took a quick this is really quick, really rough of, okay, so a teacher is in a multi-level classroom and she has student performing at the initial precursor or the proximal precursor or the distal precursor level. What are some things that can be done? So I just took a quick snapshot of it, of course, just to share out as far as unpacking this standard that is assessed in how we're going to bring that into instruction into our classroom. Okay. So here's the first one, which is unpacking that at initial precursor. So if you take a look, it's going to say the instruction piece is recognize some. And I'm just going to skip back a few slides so you see where I got that idea from. Here it is, right here in the blueprint. It's showing what that linkage level is looking like, what the distal precursor should look like, what the proximal precursor should look like. So that's where I got that idea from. And I'm just going to move forward. Sorry for the rapid movement. So here it is, recognize some. So here's a concept, building on that concept. So I've looked at the concept that's there and I'm just quickly saying, what can we do? So showing the student two samples of sum and whole. And the skills that you might look for is eye gaze, pointing, attending on the photo with sum or whole. And the big ideas which you could do linking it here is some things can be in parts or whole. And so the question is which egg is in parts and which egg is a whole. So this is just a quick snapshot of an idea of what you could do with a student at assessing at this level in your classroom. And I did one as well for the distal precursor, which is recognize separateness and recognize whole, if you remember that from what I showed you before. So maybe you can show a student a sample of both pictures or manipulatives, and then you want to build on a scale of pointing to or tending to which one is in pieces or which one is separate and or which one is whole. So the big idea is that separate things and pieces can be used to make a whole. Obviously, I don't have copyright to the Mr. Potato Head, but that's a great hands-on tactile tool that you can use as well to kind of teach the concept. Of course, we want to link it to fractions, but we're looking at the distal precursor level. So a question that you may ask at its level, pulled from the essential element before, is which essential question before is which shape is part of a whole. Okay, and crafting your questions and instruction that way. And then I did a third one, was on the proximal precursor level, and that was partition shapes. That's what that said at that level. So you can show a student a sample of both pictures or manipulatives. And in this case, of course, we know all about the pizza. We've all used it in instruction. And then the skill is that we want to identify one part versus the whole. And the big idea here could be that they would recognize some shapes can be divided into equal parts. And then a question that you may pose is, how do I divide this so it have equal parts? What do I need to do? And maybe they may have to show you the cutting motion or whatever it is that they'll do. So this is some quick snapshots of ideas of how we can take an element that is assessed and bring it right into our instruction. All right. So I want to shift focus for a little bit to the familiar text. So the familiar text in the DLM assessments are shared through Tar Heel Reader. And Tar Heel Reader is a library of open source accessible texts for individuals with disabilities of all ages. DLM shares the text that they use in their alternate assessment on Tar Heel Reader. So teachers can use this text in their classroom instruction. And that also helps the student be familiar with the text when it's time for the assessment. So I'm going to show you that really quickly. And so we remember again how to get there. I'm just going to go there really quickly. And here we are in English Language Arts. Here are the familiar text. And I'm just going to delve us a little bit deeper on what's here. So there's an about the grade 3 familiar text, which tells you more information on the book and the corresponding DLM title and just a quick summary of this. And if you take a look, here's the initial precursor, can pay attention to object characteristics due to language cues. So that's what they're expecting at this level using this text. And so what's wonderful about this text is that a teacher could easily pull this text up, it goes right there, and use it in class, in their classroom instruction. And the students will be familiar with that text when they see it again in the assessment. That's just a little bit about familiar text. The other piece is using the release test, and there are two things. Here it is in the ELA section. They have just a release test at each linkage level that can further be used to we educators can see what, especially those unfamiliar with assessment, can see exactly what is what the test looks like without violating test security. There are release tests that you can look at, but you can also use these in your instruction as well. I want to get to, let's see if I'm getting it right. I want to make sure. Okay. Over in on this page, on our educator resource page, there's a guide to practice activities and release testlets that's there. And this shows this guide is very useful because you can go in and do demos on it, and it's really good. You can access the practice activities and release tests through Kite, and this walks you through all of this. And it's a great another great instructional tool as well. So I just showed you how to get to the practice activities. So there are two kind of practice activities. One for the teacher to get a tutorial about the testlets that are administered directly by the educator. And the teacher practice activity is a tutorial about, again, what I said, testlets that are given by the educator. And then the teacher administered testlets are typically for students with pre-symbolic communication who cannot interact directly with the computer. And then you have the student practice activity, which is a tutorial on Testlets that are administered directly to the student. So these computer directed Testlets are used when the content can be accessed directly by the computer. All right. So that guide that I show you is there to further give more information on this. And then of course you have testlets that distal precursor, proximal, target, and successor. Those are typically computer delivered, but they're also a great instructional tool, particularly what I talked about before, the familiar text. It's great to use those and use it along with unpacking the standards. Even on those that are being assessed as well. This especially comes in useful for teachers that want to use the instructionally embedded testlets. Um, though, uh, though we are a year-end state, we have access to the instructionally embedded testlets, and it gives you online access to an instructional planner. And I share that in the data and reporting literacy webinar. So check that out. I do share a snapshot of it, but it's a great blueprint, and it gives you the blueprint, and a teacher decides, hey, I'm going to instruct on this blueprint using this essential using that essential element, and then the student is assessed on it. So it links instruction and assessment very well, the instructionally embedded testlets, and that window is usually open I think September up until February 26th, around there. I think it's open till. So I urge you to use those instructional embedded testlets because it's a great link for your classroom of what am I going to teach these particular learners, and then how can I assess them, and it's already there for you to do. And it gives you a great information, which is a great segue into my next slide, which is, as we know, Delaware is a year-end state, and students who complete the dynamic learning map assessments, they receive an individual score report. So these score reports are designed to be useful in preparing individualized education program documents. The reports may also support teachers in making decisions about instruction, monitoring student progress, and adjusting the instruction to meet changing student needs. So they're very useful, the individual score reports. So this is an actual Delaware student score report, and I do talk a little bit more in depth about this in the second webinar. I describe the information a lot more, but for our purposes, we're going to look at the information provided here about the student who is performing at the emerging level. So the information that's provided here can be useful for a teacher with multi-level students in their classroom. A teacher can use information presented here, particularly if they use small groups and rotations in their classroom. This shows what the students can do, such as indicating, attending, and naming objects. The student is also able to identify character actions. So we see all of that here. And this information then you can use this to say, form your small groups or determine a start of instruction as well. It can give the teacher an indication of where the student needs to go instruction wise. So, okay, now that they're able to do this, where else can I take them after this? All right. So to learn more about the score reports, Dynamic Learning Maps has videos. What do the DLM alternate assessments measure? What is skill mastery? What information is contained in a score report? And how can score reports be used? And those videos, I'm going to show you how to get to them really quickly. Okay, let's see. Oh, let's see if it, for some reason, oh, there it is. I didn't press that escape button strong enough. So let's see here really quickly. So I want to go back to the educator resource page. Okay. I think I'll just go back to the Delaware. And underneath this tab, scoring and reporting, that's where you'll find the score report information there, and the video transcript is there. It's very useful as well. It gives you everything that's being said in print form. And what is skill mastery? So here are the 4 videos, and this is how you'd find it. And then there's even useful information on the performance level descriptors. Here it is, what that means. Again, I do talk about this as well in the others in the webinar 2. I talk a little bit more there. So all those are there for your reference as well with the score reports. Okay, so if there are any questions, I'm looking out in chat box. I haven't seen any questions. Now, as far as with the score reports, their upcoming training, well, there's only one left now. There were 2. The second training is coming up, and DLM is guiding this training, and it's going to teach you how to use those score reports and mini-maps to build instructions. So picture it as a longer, more in-depth version of what I just did here, but it's going to give the teacher who has her students, who knows her students and her class, the chance to learn and then have a takeaway as well. So that's where that, a little bit more information about that upcoming training. Again, I'm going to pause for some questions or comments quickly. Okay, I don't see any popping up. So if you have any questions regarding the information presented for any of these webinars, please contact the Content Education Associates listed. Thank you so much for your attendance today. Bye, everyone.